to Art. I'm Aaron Jack, and we're going to be live with Marine Costello. Anyhow, so Marine is going to be on here, and so welcome to Artist to Art. And I'm Aaron Jack on Aaron Jack Line Art. And as people come on, sign on, welcome. Welcome to this time of live. And we're going to be because we're alive here. Alive. Hey. Hey.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
How are you? How are you doing? I'm well. I'm going to write your name at the bottom here for everybody else tuning in a minute. But first I want to ask, where are you right now? Can you hear me?
Well, right now I am in my office working remotely, as we all are, because the UK is currently in lockdown. So
So you're in an office remote from everybody, everything. How is that for you in this strange world?
it is a strange world. But actually it's been really, really busy. I think you've probably noticed this, but people have come around, and especially people in the art world, to we need social media and online marketing more than ever. So I'm actually getting a lot of requests and feeling, socially isolated, but connected through social media, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So for everybody else out there, because you're calling in from Parker Harris, how do we spell your name so that we can find you?
Well, you can find Parker Harris at Parker Harris Co. on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And I think we'll go through a few of the other accounts I manage as passion projects. But you can find me at Marine Costello, Marine Costello, Costlo.
Cast. Could you do that slower for everybody? So sorry.
Costelo, Costello.
Okay. And so what are these other projects that you manage? Just so that we can get a basis and understand how many amazing things that you're working on.
I have a few hats on my head, metaphorically. Well, I'm half French, half American, which is why I sound the way I do, and I sometimes use weird expressions that might not translate really well. And I work in the UK. I studied art history in Paris in a school called the École du Louvre, which is based in the Louvre Museum, which is a pretty awesome space to learn about art history. Um, and I'm really passionate about making art accessible. I realize that not everyone has the luxury of getting a degree in art history, visual art, what have you. And I think it's really important to share that with as many people as possible. I think it can be really intimidating for people who don't necessarily um, have a background where they feel confident walking into a museum or a contemporary art gallery, which can be a really intimidating space. Um, to and I like just sharing that in a quite casual way, not too stuffy. So a few years ago, I created History of Art Daily and Art Featured, which are two platforms where I share about historic and contemporary art. And I think that's where we connected, actually. um, so yeah, that's it. It's really my passion to share about art and to make it as accessible to everyone as possible, because I genuinely believe that it should be for everyone.
Wow. So what are some of the best ways that those out there could maybe learn more about, because you're talking about art history as such a basis for understanding and be able to find oneself in a place where they can better go to a gallery or feel comfortable in these different spaces. What are some maybe resources or ways in which you'd suggest that people do this? And is there a way to integrate that in one's life that you think that's out there for?
Yeah, well, I've found that social media was a great tool, if not necessarily to learn in depth, because there's only so much the format can allow. And I find that a lot of it is what I call art porn, which is just, this is beautiful. Do you like it? You know, it doesn't necessarily go into the nuance of something. But I definitely would say just start by following your interest. You know, and it doesn't have to be highbrow at all. I'm not a believer that some part of art is, you know, classical and acceptable and cool and erudite, and another one is not acceptable. You know, I don't really believe in a divide between like pop culture and highbrow art, if you want. So just follow your interest. You know, if you see a Renaissance painting that you think is super cool, then Google it, look through the hashtags on Instagram. Or if you see, you know, a fluffy dog at the bottom of a painting that you think is uber cute, then maybe Google that. And you know, once libraries will be open again, walk into your next door bookshop and you know, just browse through the titles. There's a lot of online courses as well. Just don't be intimidated to start, because most people who seem like they know everything don't, you know.
So just like go into the library, go look, go find what you like is basically what you're saying. And you're talking about the nuance and really getting to understand like the um deeper texture, it sounds like, of
Yeah.
what's happening. How do you how would someone who isn't as familiar with the deeper texture, or who's just at the surface of maybe the texture, really delve in deeper?
Mm. Well, again, I'd say, you know, follow your interest and just fall down a rabbit hole. If you find an artist that you like, if they're contemporary, then follow them on social media. Look at what they're up to. Look at their website. See if they have any books or podcasts or things like that. I think, for instance, conversations like you're doing are really good to make visual art understandable and accessible. Yeah,
Cool.
just go with what you like,
Thank you.
and
So,
follow me at History of Art Daily.
oh yeah. Feel free to plug the ones that relate, because you've got a lot. You've got some amazing like different projects going on. Now, I want to jump a little bit to I know we have some artists on here. I want to go into some of these social media things and then come back to some of your projects, because I know you just really wanted to give some value to the artists out there.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, the first thing I'd say, if you're an artist and you're starting out on social media, or you want to really up your game, and it seems super basic, but it's be social. The clue is in the name. It's called social media for a reason. And it's really about thinking why you're on social media and what your goals are. Is it to create an amazing network of artists that you can, you know, discuss your work with and maybe collaborate? Is it to find a gallery that will represent you? Is it to sell directly to buyers? Because that's a really powerful thing that you can do through social media. Is sort of bypass traditional intermediaries and uh, and you know, get into collectors' living rooms and mobile phones. Um, so I think it's really important to, you know, have a sense of community and of why you are using social media. So follow people you're interested in, leave insightful comments. And by that I don't mean great job, awesome, and especially not using bots. You know, you see a few people doing that and leaving these sort of random comments under your posts. So create a conversation, leave a comment that's insightful, maybe ask a question, and create relationships. Social media isn't really a separate world from the real world. And at the minute, the virtual world is sort of all we have to connect sometimes. All right, well, the next thing I did want to mention was to find your niche. So what that means is, your niche is this sort of corner of the internet or the art world where you exist. In French, you would say dig your hole. It's like find your space, find your purpose. And if you want to share your art, then I would definitely advise to post only your art or only things that relate to your art. And I think you're an amazing example for that, Erin, because actually, yeah, because you have your photography account, you have your visual art account, and you have your portrait account, and you nourish all of those, but you also keep them separated. So someone might follow you because they love your artist to art talks and they love your, visual art sort of abstract work. Some other person might follow you because they love your photography, and those people might not meet. And I think it's great that you leave the choice to people to follow one thread of your work and not necessarily the other. And that's cool. So I think it's important to know, if people follow your art page, it's because they want to see more of your art, and that's why they're there. So it's perfectly fine to post about your personal life and things like that, but I definitely advise you to create a separate page for that, just for your friends and family. And the same goes for like political opinions, for instance. We've just come out of a major election. We are always going to have big moments where we're really, really itching to share our opinions. But it turns out some people might follow your art but not have the same political opinions as you do. And once again, that is perfectly fine. So if your art isn't intrinsically political, I'd say maybe keep the political opinions, aside. I know this is a bit controversial, and artists want to express themselves, but I would say, express yourself through your visual art, through that medium, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. I appreciate your advice on these things. It starts getting tricky when one's work starts becoming political for a moment, and then it's like, or like what to speak about, what's like current culturally, and but I think there's a real difference with like making it about all the politics versus that. I don't know. That's just I've been struggling with that myself, so I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, I mean, to each their own. I'm just sharing my, my thoughts, which come from experience. I actually did that mistake once, and never again. Where it was, I don't remember which election it was, but I thought it was topical. Like you just said, it's in the conversation, it's in the hashtags, people are talking about it, so you're thinking, I'm going to do something that's relevant. So I posted, and I think it's still up there for you to see if you want to see all the nasty comments. I posted on my History of Art Daily page, where I share about contemporary and mostly historic art. I shared a picture by Ai Weiwei, where he does quite a vulgar gesture to a lot of political buildings, right? So he's a very contemporary, political photographer. I thought it would be part of the current discourse and it would be relatable and people would learn something about contemporary photography. Well, a lot of people who were Republican leaning, because that is the current president's political affiliation, decided that they would bombard me with hate comments. And you know what? I don't think that's okay. But I also realized that a lot of my followers, because it's the history of art niche, may have some more traditional opinions than I do. And that is, again, perfectly valid because it's not, it's not my niche, if you will, to be sharing political content. My niche is trying to educate people and just share art that I love. So that's just my 2 cents. If you want to avoid any friction with potential collectors, it might be worth keeping things separate. Unless your art is political cartoons, then just go for it. All right. Okay, well, this is another one that may seem controversial upfront. So at Parker Harris, we do a lot of mentoring for artists. This is something that I'm super passionate about. It's literally what feeds my soul and makes me want to go to work in the morning, is to help artists. So I know that this is a subject where at first they're like, Marine, really? So, when you think about a brand, you might think about Nike, Coca-Cola, Starbucks, Disney. What is a brand? Well, it's a name, a logo, a product, and a set of values that you stand for as a brand and that people attribute to you, right? And you might tend to think that doesn't apply to an artist. And as an artist, obviously you are a multifaceted person and you can't be pinpointed into something that seems overly capitalistic or marketing, But actually, if you look back not so far in art history, you see that the concept applies. So, take Andy Warhol, for instance. His name is branding because he actually shortened his full name, which was Andrew Warhola, to something a bit more, shorter, more adaptable to the American public, maybe. A logo or an image. Well, Andy Warhol was an image in himself, wasn't he? He crafted his own person, even using wigs to keep his recognizable hairstyle. And he used super iconic images and somehow found the way to make them even more iconic. And you might all know this, but he actually studied in illustration and marketing. So he was actually the marketing guru of the art world, It's also a product. So Andy Warhol sold a set of products, and one of the most famous ones is his prints, for instance, his prints of Marilyn. And the last thing is, you associate his brand with a set of values, which are making art accessible, everyone having their 15 minutes of fame. Shame. No.
Yeah.
I hope this is not mine.
No.
So yeah, I think it's sort of, I think it can be a bit scary to think, okay, who am I? What's my brand? And you don't have to take it too seriously, but I do think as an artist, it's an interesting process because it sort of forces you to think about, who am I? Where do I come from? What do I stand for? What makes me me? What brings collectors or people to me? And that can be a really interesting part, not only of your artistic process, but also your personal and professional growth. And a lot of studies have actually shown that artists who view themselves as brands, or at least artists who sort of implement personal branding, principles, tend to thrive and tend to have better results, or at least tend to have a satisfaction in their career that is higher. So it might be something, again, that you might want to consider. Well, I don't know about you, Aaron, but I think I get an idea from you immediately when I go to your account, because it's super curated, and I'm like, okay, Aaron does, at least your, line art account, Aaron does abstract, gestural paintings, drawings, shapes, is all about, finding inner understanding, and that goes through collaborations with people, which is why the interviews make perfect sense. Am I right?
I appreciate that you got all that that you really I appreciate that. I appreciate your feedback as someone who studies this. I try my best to find a way to weave the threads and find ways to build a brand that makes sense for me, that has openings at the top as opposed to like a cage, but like where I feel like I can grow from it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a beautiful way to put it, because it should be a base, it shouldn't be something that limits you. And to go back to marketing, strong brands evolve. They don't stay the same. So if you look at Disney, the type of content they were putting out 50 years ago, if they were putting it out today, we would be like, Disney, really? Princesses getting married and that's it? So you do have to grow, but the basis is there. So I think it's amazing that you managed to do that and grow such a strong community around you.
Oh, well, thank you. I really appreciate that, because you've done certainly an amazing job yourself with all of your projects. How how did you start really coming in on the brands of some of your core projects right now?
Um, well, the thing I'd say, and I suppose a lot of artists might relate to this, is I couldn't not do it. So, it just, do you get it?
No, I totally get it, because I used to use that phrase, and people, people thought, like, what's he saying? I don't quite get it. Then, like, it took them a few years of saying it to get it. So, so for some people it's a funny phrase, but for me that's the only way to put it. So
Yeah, I I'm really passionate about visual art, and I also grew up in, the digital era. So I consider that I was sort of lucky enough to grow out without a phone and without TikTok and all the rest of it. But to learn it early enough in my career that it is very natural. And I understand it isn't natural to everyone. So I love being able to, share what I know about social media with artists, with art lovers, through my work at Parker Harris, and also through my, my passion projects of art featured in History of Art Daily. So how I got started really is it just needed to come out, if that makes sense. I just want to share about art history, and God forbids someone mentions an artist in conversation, because then we're done for.
wow, so you just like went in and studied it, and you're like, I have to do this, I have to share this, or like, how did that work out?
Yeah, well, I started History of Art Daily and Arts Featured when I was studying for my master's in art history. So the thing is, when you study in university, you tend to hyper specialize. So you'll go into a class where it's animal arts in the 18th century in France, in Versailles, and it's super niche, you know. Um, so I saw a lot of things that I couldn't quite use in an academic sense, and I still wanted to use it and share it with the world through another vehicle than an article or a dissertation, if that makes sense. Um, and yeah, and it was really fortunate, and so I really encourage people, whether they're artists, whether they love art, to uh, to explore what they love and to start doing that, whether it's on the side of their job, whether it's on the side of whatever it is, of studying. If you're lucky, like me, to go to university, I do realize that's a privilege, and not everyone gets to. Um, just experiment with what you love, because that is ultimately how I ended up in the position I'm in today, doing a job that I absolutely love and that I wouldn't trade for anything in the world, because I get to work with amazing people like you every day. Um, so it allowed me to really grow my confidence too, and I think that's important as an artist as well, is to refine your craft. And at the beginning, oh god, if you I haven't even deleted them, but if you go back to my first post, it's like I was obsessed with like this idea of creating a feed, so the feed looked good on the whole, but every individual post you were like, is there value there, girl? You know. um so I really encourage people to just explore what they're passionate with, and maybe something amazing will come out of it, like, you know, a job, a career, uh, connections, and maybe you'll just go, well, that was fun for a year, okay.
So that's interesting. So you were really focused on your feed, and that kind of gave you the thing to then find that value and find what you really could connect with audiences about. It sounds like, I don't know. Is that
Yeah,
something?
well, I think I've actually put in there, in my next
Oh
tip
yeah,
was
curate
correct
your
your
feed.
feed.
There we go.
So that's it, it's actually, so it's something that's important on Instagram in particular, but every social media platform, but Instagram in particular, because it's super visual, and the first thing people see when they go to your profile is how the pictures flow together. So this is what you call a feed. um, I think it's important to try and make it look good. So what I mean by that is sort of, it's a bit like um, a a never rolling permanent solo exhibition, if that makes sense. And you wouldn't put next to each other works that completely clash or don't look good next to each other. So I think it's important to sort of curate it as you would an exhibition. But at the same time, I would say, don't take it so seriously, just like we were talking about the brand. Don't take it so seriously that it stifles you. Post something that you want to post, and then you want to share it with the world, and that you're super proud of, and think about how things look next to each other, because as a visual artist that is important. But also, you know, don't let it stop you from posting something. Oh right, well, there's different ways to approaching Instagram. One of them is to only post finished works, and the other is to sort of approach it as a visual diary, or, you know, an exhibition where people get to see a bit behind the scenes. And so on that note of not being, you know, afraid of posting, do keep in mind that it's an easy way to create content, to go, okay, well, I'm working in the studio, I can post a video of myself, you know, like a time lapse, for instance, or I can post something about me explaining my work, or I can post a behind the scenes photo of my really messy studio with all my work. People are interested in artists' processes. They like seeing behind the scenes. It creates this cool connection with people who like your work, and people are quite fascinated to know, well, how did this thing come out of your brain? How did it end up on the canvas? So I'd say don't be afraid to show your process. It really gives a new depth to the finished works that you're sharing. And that's the really cool thing about social media, like compared to a catalog exhibition or your website, which you tend to update less regularly. Go for it and show your process, even if it's a bit messy, all the better. All right, well, the last tip I wanted to share today is to just get started. I know this is something that comes out of a lot of the conversations I think you have on this channel, which is, as an artist, it's part of you to have a different point of view and to have something to say and to have a different way of saying it. And I think a lot of times you can think, oh, well, it's already been said, it's already been done, there's 2 billion people on Facebook, what about little old me? You have a voice and you have a place, and your art is absolutely unique. So get started, have a look at which platforms are the best for you. There's a lot of different platforms out there, the biggest ones being Instagram for visual art, obviously, Facebook, Twitter, and then you have TikTok, which is one of the newcomers, and you have lots of platforms to sell your art, like Artsy, Behance, what have you. So go for it. I'm seeing people.
We have some questions here.
Yeah, I'm seeing someone saying, what about shy people? Well, do you have any advice for people, shy people, before I start, Erin? Because I've been blabbing on.
I mean, I think for me it was because like being behind the camera as a photographer, videographer, it's been a challenge for me to then be in front of the camera with video, and then being on camera live has been a real challenge for me. And I think it was just like for me, it's like I wasn't necessarily shy, but I think it's just like sometimes there's like different barriers to what is shy. Like even like shy is to not put one's work out there and to even let other people see it. So I think for me, it's more a matter of like steps to be out there in the world and to share it, and to share oneself.
Mm.
How do you feel?
Yeah. Well, I would say this is a very common thing. So, to the lovely person who asked the question, I'm trying to scroll, but
11th windmill. What about shy people? Any advice? Mm-hmm.
So it's a very common thing among visual artists. And again, we mentioned quite a few at Parker Harris, and a lot of them tell me, well, okay, Marine, but I'm a visual artist. I chose this career because I can express myself through paint, not words or videos. And a lot of people, their comfort zone might be different. It might be to be in the studio, it might be to be outside painting or creating a sculpture. What my very honest advice would be is, you might not be able to tell, but I am quite shy and introverted, and a lot of people are, but it's kind of fake it till you make it, if that makes sense. So we all walking around, and it's not written on your forehead that you're afraid, or that you think you might be judged. And to be honest, most people feel like that. So if that can help, there's there's no reason to be shy. Some people are going to get what you do, some people aren't. But the overwhelming majority, if they don't like it, they'll just leave it, you know. And if you don't put yourself out there, and if you don't ask, then the answer is going to be no. So if you don't try it, then no one is going to see your beautiful work, which is a shame. So not to plug, but do feel free to reach out to people who do work like me, like Parker Harris, who mentor artists. I have realized how important it was for a lot of artists to have mentors, because working in the studio, especially in these times, can feel very isolated. So create a community of artists, reach out to people, and just do it.
I have a question, kind of related to that. Maybe it's like who's going to be the spokesperson for one's own brand if it's not the person themselves? Like, it could be a cartoon of that person, but it's really hard to make a cartoon of yourself for everything that you want to say.
Yeah.
Which it's possible, but who's going to be the spokes character of the brand? So like, I know that's why a lot of like maybe illustrators go in and they work for maybe illustration companies or like studios, like might go work for Disney or something like that. And then there's somebody else who's the brand head. But I feel like it's something different as like as an independent artist, who's, you know, what's the brand, and if the brand is the person making it, or is the brand like this other?
Yeah. What it feels like to me is it's sort of your professional persona. So it's not that different to the corporate world, where you would show up to a meeting wearing a shirt and maybe not swear in front of your boss. It's like you present part of you. It's not necessarily all of the multifaceted person that you are, but it is part of you, and it is like this sort of refined part of you. I see someone saying in the comments, like an avatar, and maybe if that helps you, you know, I think a lot of people can see it differently. How I voice it is, obviously all I do is not art and social media, but that's who I am to the world, you know. And that's what I do through my work at Parker Harris. So it can be like that, or if you're comfortable with it, like you and your cool little artist art cartoon, to be like, well, this is this Aaron.
Yeah, this Aaron, the ones that yeah, my friend Ryan made that after I interviewed him, and I was like, oh, that's kind of perfect. I'll use that.
No, it's really sweet. It even has your bandana and everything.
Right? Yeah, it's like yeah, Ryan and Tuji. He's in Syria. I've been doing a whole series of these Freedom Tapestry project where we've been focusing on Syria and like Middle East, and then different parts in the world, some in Russia, but a lot in Syria because one of our main curators of the project is there. So it's been interesting, like having the, you know, like feedback loops as we go through the world with the bandana and all. I don't. It's like my mask. It's to remind people to wear their mask. That's why I started.
Oh,
I
I
started this whole.
see.
I mean, it's kind of turned into its own thing, but originally I was like, oh, everybody wear the mask, and then it can be stylish too. So let's check out some of your projects.
Okay.
Let's get it big
Oh,
here.
all right. Well, this is the Trinity Boy Wharf Drawing Prize, which is, so it's the UK's biggest drawing prize, and it's, for the first time, it was open internationally this year. So we had entrants from 42 different countries around the world, which is really amazing. And the Trinity Boy Wharf Drawing Prize was created by this amazing artist, educator, teacher, and all-around really cool human being called Anita Taylor. She is the dean of an art university in Dundee, Scotland, and 25 years ago, she went, well, wait a minute, there aren't a lot of opportunities for drawing in particular, because drawing is often seen as, you know, a before thought, something that you do before creating a sculpture, an architecture, a painting, but not necessarily an art form in itself. And so that's what she really set out to do, is to celebrate drawing as an art form and as a means of expression. So she created Trinity Boy Wharf Drawing Prize. It's called that because it's sponsored by Trinity Boy Wharf, which is this really cool artistic hub in London. So the show is open in Scotland now because Scotland is not under lockdown, so people can go and see physical shows there. They're very, very, very lucky. And it will be going to London in January, where we'll be giving out awards. So there'll be £17,000 in awards to some amazing artists. So and there's also a online program, so everyone can partake. It usually happens at night, circa 6-7 p.m. UK time. So that's great because people watching in America will be awake too. It'll be around 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. for you guys. And it really invites people, you know, even if they don't have a lot of experience in art or no experience at all, to just draw, come to these conversations, take part in the online, you know, classes, and just engage, which is really exciting.
Very cool. And where can they find out about that?
Well, they can go and follow us on Parker Harris Co., which is the easiest way to do that. And they can also just Google Trinity Boy Wharf Drawing Prize. I know it's a mouthful, so just go to @Parker Harris Co. and we'll get you sorted.
Cool.
Right, this is also the Trinity Boy Wharf Drawing Prize. So that was the exhibition back last year when it was in London. So we at Parker Harris, we manage a lot of these art prizes and open art exhibitions, so anyone can enter. And last year, the artist who won, she was actually working in a corporate career, and the prize gave her this extra bit of confidence and also some financial help, because as I said, the prizes are really, really generous. And she actually started going to university to study art, and she's doing amazingly well. So we're really proud to have these sort of prizes that give platforms to up and coming artists, that give them the confidence, that give them a new audience. And that is, you know, one of the amazing success stories that came through the Trinity Boy Wharf Drawing Prize.
Wow.
Right. Well, this is the ING Discerning Eye. So it is a show that is sponsored by ING, and that was created by this charity called the Discerning Eye. It's been going on for 30 years, and this year we are hosting it 100% online for the reasons that you guys can all guess. And there's actually been an amazing response. You know, we did a lot of hard work to put the online exhibition together, and we were conscious that people are really really craving experiencing visual art through, you know, ideally in a gallery in the flesh, but through any means possible. So the response has been amazing. The show is currently available online. Again, you can find it through our platforms at Parker Harris Co. It also has its own Instagram. And the particular thing about this show is, first of all, it's only small artworks. So artworks have to be under a certain scale. And what this gives you is, if you live in a small space, you know, you might not have the wall space to have this humongous large scale painting. So you have paintings, sculptures, crafts, everything is small scale. And that also usually makes the price more affordable. And the second thing is it's selected by 6 selectors independently. So they all curate these sort of mini exhibitions. And so our selectors are, for instance, 2 collectors. One of them is Beverly Knight, who is a very famous singer known as the Queen of British Soul. And the other collector is Mervyn Metcalf, who is a banker by trade and an art collector by passion. He has a really impressive collection, mainly of up-and-coming artists. And we also have 2 critics. So Tabish Khan is a critic for some big London-based publications and is all about making art accessible. And we also have Joe Baring, who's the director of the Ingram collection. So you have these really big art world gurus, if you will, who sort of handpick these artworks. There's 1,000 of them. Most of them are, you know, at quite affordable price points. So it's really cool to be able to browse through them online and maybe find a little something for Christmas. I saw someone asking, how do you define drawing? And that is actually a brilliant question, because the prize had, so the Trinity Boy Wolf Drawing Prize, which we were talking about, it's known for sort of pushing the boundaries of what a drawing is. So you might want to look at this year's exhibition and previous exhibitions. There's been video included. This year there's a really cool performance piece. It's a group performance piece where different people sort of co-create the drawing with their bodies, and so it's a large-scale piece which is quite abstract. There's been a video of someone drawing in the sand. There's things that look like sculptures, you know, there's 3D. So it's a very, very contemporary prize that it's very much like pushing the boundaries of what is a drawing and very much asking that question. So it's far from only being a preparatory drawing, although those are allowed to.
Interesting. So it's not just, so it's away from just like pigment. It's like, what is drawing?
Yeah, I mean, I still don't have the answer, but the show does help. The show does help really broaden the definition. You know, is it mark making? Is it exploring an idea? Is it expressing a feeling? And there's some really, really amazing drawings in the show, and some are hyper realistic, but others are really expressive or abstract. So I really encourage you to take a look and maybe enter next year. Who knows?
Who knows? Let's see.
All right. Well, this is also the Discerning Eye, which is online now. It showcases 1,000 artworks by 600 artists. We're really pleased because, you know, so this was when it was happening in a gallery, and you can see that. So you can see all the small scale artworks, which are now displayed on a virtual exhibition. And because it is a virtual exhibition, we were able to include so many more artworks because we didn't have to push the walls of the gallery, you know. So we get to support, you know, twice the amount of artists, to showcase twice the amount of works. And it seemed really important to ING, to the Discerning Eye, and to the Parker Harris team to support artists now more than ever and to really showcase them. So we're doing these really cool takeovers on Instagram so at the minute, Mervyn Metcalf is showcasing his tips on collecting, you know, and we're just sort of making this platform available for artists, but also making buying art a lot less scary than it needs to be. You don't have to define yourself as an art collector to want to put a beautiful piece of art on your wall or to give it to someone you love.
So redefining like what it means to be a collector, it sounds like, or like, is that kind of?
Yeah, well, that's a big thing I usually tell artists whom I mentor, and that is a big thing with the Discerning Eye, is to make buying art accessible. Obviously, I appreciate that, you know, buying a piece of art is a luxury. However you view it, it's not something that's going to put food on your table or electricity in your house. But there's some pieces, like the vast majority of the pieces are quite accessible, you know, 100, 200, 300. That's about what you could put in a Christmas present for someone you care about very, very much. And it's a really cool way to get someone something unique, or get yourself something unique. I'm a big believer that we tend to think about people who buy art as these major collectors who loan their pieces to the MoMA, you know, who have these really impressive apartments in the center of a big metropolitan city, and only collect big names. But actually, everyone can be a collector, or everyone can be a buyer. And the only thing that means is seeing a piece that you love, that you want to live with, that you want in your house, or that you want someone else to have because it makes you think of them, or you know it's their favorite color, or whatever it is. There's no bad reason to buy a piece of art. It doesn't have to be because you were thinking of the concept and you thought it would go within the whole of your collection. That's cool too, don't get me wrong. But it can be because you're like, ooh, that makes me think of this place I went to, or this feeling I had, or I really relate to this piece and I want to live with it. Oh, well, really quick, these happen to be the pages I manage. So this is Art Featured, where I showcase different contemporary artists whom I love, whom I work with, who I admire. So some of you might have spotted that this week's artist is none other than Erin.
So go follow.
Yeah. Is this really, really famous major artist, so you're not going to want to miss it.
Amazing. Well, thank you. So go follow Art Featured. It's great. Learn about all different kinds of artists, right? That's the
message. It's just, you know, showcasing people, sharing my tips on how to grow on social media, and really trying to use the platform I built to build other people up.
That's amazing. How did you start this one?
Well, again, I was studying art, and I think I realized there was a gap, if you will, and that's how a lot of successful products are created, because you realize that something you want isn't out there, so you might as well make it yourself. And I realized that a lot of the pages that were sharing art, it were lovely and shared beautiful, beautiful pieces, but didn't necessarily like go into who the artist was and what the meaning of the piece was. And I wanted to see that on the internet, so I did it. And I've recently made the choice to go really more in depth and to like focus on one artist in a week and share a few of their pieces, so people can really get to know them.
That's amazing. Getting to know one artist at a time. I like that, as you can tell.
Yeah, I didn't know that about you.
I didn't know that. Yeah. So I appreciate that. Tell me
Yeah.
about this.
Well, again, so you can see actually the type of content I post on History of Art Daily. Some of it is serious, and some of it is just plain silly, and some of it is, you know, sort of contemporary interpretations of historic works. You know what, I find this thing that there is this sort of historical distance. So when we look at a Renaissance painting, or even when we look at, you know, you have the scream on the screen, and there's this thing where we have a difficult time relating and going, well, I don't know anything about the time this artist lived in. I don't know what was going through their mind. Surely it was super different to where we are today because we have technology and things like that. But actually, you know, people were people back then too. And if you sort of put it into modern words, then it makes a lot more sense. Um, so, you know, for instance, when I was studying for my master's, I had to go through a lot of archives. So a lot of, you know, old papers that were written in the 19th century. And the language was quite different. You know, it seems a lot more elevated than the way we tend to speak today. And so I read a lot of art critic, and once you looked sort of beyond the style, which was very formal, you were like, oh my god, you really ripped that artist to shreds, didn't you? Like, this is savage. This is some this is some punk rock stuff, you know. Um, so I think what I try to do is sort of make art history more contemporary and more accessible and less scary. And if that has to go through a couple memes every once in a while, then it's not beyond me to share the meme.
Interesting. So to give it, it sounds like it's giving people more of like an understanding behind the work that you're finding yourself as an interesting moment in history, maybe.
Yeah, I try to keep it varied. So sometimes I will just share an artwork because it's beautiful and let people know what it is and what time it was made in and where people can see it. But I do try to go in depth and give people a few keys to a fun story behind an artwork, or, you know, something that they can go deeper into. Um, so for instance, you can see the Van Gogh there, which is a painting of his bedroom, which is super famous. And most people look at that and go, okay, well, it's Van Gogh's bedroom, I know that. And it's then peeling those layers. So there's actually a lot of different versions of that painting. So I covered those. Um, it's a time where Van Gogh was particularly troubled and going through a lot of stuff. So I did talk about that. And he also wrote letters explaining. So he corresponded with his brother Theo, for instance, and he wrote letters like describing the room. So it's actually really interesting to see, or at least it's interesting to me, and I hope it is to you. But it's really fun to see how the room looked like in real life and how he interpreted it. So you can see in the painting that it looks kind of wonky because it looks kind of asymmetrical, and it was. So that's something I learned. And I mean, it's literally, I'll go, ooh, I learned something interesting today, I shall share it.
Very cool. I'm just seeing if there's anything we need to ask here in the question. Um, it's it's like, oh, it's always like getting, you know, balancing that. What maybe simplify the question. It's a very long question. Simplify it so that I can get to it. How's that?
Oh, right. Well, this was just a I'm trying to get away from the question. Sorry. This was a class that I taught. So we do a lot of mentoring, group and one-on-one at Parker Harris. So I thought this would be a fun little introduction into the tips we did. So we used to do these in person. So this was a particular class on social media for artists. And I tried to sort of start at the basic level. So what are the platforms? What are the right platforms for you? What is a hashtag? What is a geotag? These things are not obvious. And then we sort of, depending on where the artists are, we sort of go into more in-depth questions. I do find that something that comes up a lot is which hashtags should I use? And I find, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I find that people take them very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So, some people will say, "Oh, I don't want to use hashtags because it'll look like I'm trying too hard." And I'm like, "Well, you are trying. there's there's nothing shameful in that." And so, for those of you who don't know, a hashtag is this little hash key followed by a keyword. And what that does is it makes your content searchable so people can find it. And that's really useful so people who don't know you can find your work. And some people will go, "Oh, well, I don't define myself as an abstract artist. I consider myself a conceptual landscape painter." And I'm like, well, that's really cool. But hashtag conceptual landscape painting is not as big as hashtag abstract painting, so you might want to use both. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I find it really interesting how different people are able to use it innovatively, like
Mm-hmm.
as like similarities, and then I learned from some younger users of Instagram to use them sometimes in contrast to what's happening.
Right.
So if everything is blue and then you see something that's yellow, then it stands out. I'm not sure how I feel
Mm-hmm.
about it, but I think but there's different ways to utilize them. I think that's kind of a thing.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of people using hashtags that aren't relevant.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's hashtag blue painting, then as far as I'm concerned, your painting better be blue. you know, um, that's just me. I do find that some people do that, and it irks me because Instagram works as a search engine, so you can find stuff through hashtags. So if you look for hashtag landscape painting and something is a figurative sculpture, then you're like, well, that's not what I asked for. And actually, Instagram might sort of block your content because it might seem like spam. So just my 2 cents, I wouldn't recommend it. All right. Well, that was just an image of me giving a speech because behind the scenes information, Aaron's viewers, Aaron likes to be sent photos beforehand.
I
So
do.
that was just
I
a
do.
little that was just a little illustration for their classes. I see someone simplified their comment. Did you see that?
Yeah, yeah. I'm still not sure how to ask it. It comes up. It's like white on white. So, oh, here we go. It's in the oh we have questions in here. Oh, are those questions on here? I'm not. Oh, it's interesting. There's like questions that come up from my stories. That's so interesting.
Oh.
Oh, uh, yeah. It's like odd. Like all of a sudden, I'm like, those are answers to my question in my story. So, but along that same lines, Lemon Zinc asks, what about Instagram stories? Are they something that you should do?
That's a great question. Thank you. Um, yeah, absolutely. Well, the purpose of Instagram stories is they don't stay on your feed forever. They disappear after 24 hours. They tend to be in portrait format, and the cool thing is they sort of appear in a little bubble at the top of your feed. So it's a good way to sort of be at the top of people's feeds and catch people's attention as soon as they go on the app. What I find that stories are great for artists to maybe share content that they wouldn't share to their feed. So again, if you want to post behind the scenes bits, or if you're shy, as someone asked, this might be a cool way to interact with your audience, to talk to them directly, because worst comes to worst, the story is going to disappear in 24 hours. So if you don't want to see it anymore, you feel a bit shy about it, you know, you can just try it out. Yeah, and you can also use hashtags and tag people in stories, so that's really useful. I'd say I definitely recommend using that as a feature you can play around with.
Cool. So we have a question. Some artists create based on traditional artists like the Mona Lisa, like Monday Lisa. Why is it offensive for some people?
Uh, you know what? I ask myself that all the time. I don't know. It is a thing that some people who follow accounts like mine get really, really offended when there's a contemporary interpretation of a classical work like the Mona Lisa. Um, I think it might be because they get attached to it and they think that it's an oversimplification of the work. Um, I, 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 I can feel like that sometimes. You know, when people pose in front of paintings in museums, um, and it's like a really sad painting or it's a religious painting, and people are just goofing around in front of it, and you're like, oh, guys. But you know, at the end of the day, it's just people experiencing art. It's my point of view anyway. It's just people experiencing art in the way they find relevant to today. And if that's by taking selfies in front of it or by photoshopping it and making a meme out of it, then I think that's perfectly valid. Um, and I do think sometimes it can, I really enjoy them personally because I think it sort of recontextualizes these portraits that existed, you know, 500 years ago. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is what the Mona Lisa would like to look like today if she was an influencer or something like that. So I quite like them. But yeah, some people get offended by them. I don't know why.
Oh, and we have more of from.
Oh yeah, we have more. um, well, this was just to introduce what we do at Parker Harris really quick, since you know we're going live on this account. So we're a visual art consultancy based in the UK, and what that means is we organise art prizes and art exhibitions like the Trinity Wharf Drawing Prize or the Discerning Eye that I talked about. We also manage art projects, whether they're publicly or privately funded. And the last thing we do is mentor artists. So I get to give all these fun tidbits one-on-one to creatives in the UK and around the world as well.
What's something that you've seen that's just like worked that you just want to see more artists do? It doesn't
That
have to
is,
be one thing. This is totally.
yeah. um, I think when the first thing I'd say, and it might seem a bit abstract, is to not see social media as separate from yourself or your life. So we were talking about, you know, having this sort of avatar or something like that. I think for a lot of people, social media can be really intimidating, and same goes for their online exhibitions, their website, their marketing. It can be really intimidating because it seems like a separate world, if that makes sense. Um, but when artists start using it as a tool to communicate with their community and create a group around them, it becomes a lot simpler. What I personally preach is talk the way you talk normally. You know, don't all of a sudden start writing in this very art world jargon that no one else understands. Or don't start talking into hashtags if that's just not you. And maybe consider it as you're talking to your friend, or you're talking to your absolute favorite buyer ever who always collects your work and is always like, yes, I love that, you know. Maybe talk as yourself and talk to someone that you trust. And I feel that that really helps artists build a community that looks like them. Do you know what I mean?
It's an interesting idea, building a community that looks like the artist. It's a very interesting idea. It's like what, because it's not just the art, it's also the community that surrounds the art, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, again, social media is social, so it's not just about putting images of your work out there, although that's an important part of it. It's also about telling people about it, bringing people in, opening the door to your studio. And again, stories are a great place for that. Instagram Reels are a great place for that. Um, there's a lot of tools you can play with to introduce people to your work and do something that looks like you. Another really cool thing I've seen artists do, and again, it has to fit into your process and it has to be something you're comfortable with, but is bringing social media platforms like Instagram and making them part of their process and making that process really collaborative with their audience. So an artist we work with does this really cool thing where, you know, like you, she asks questions in her stories, and the audience gets to participate into the making of the work, you know. And that instantly creates a lot of interest into the work you're creating at the minute. And, you know, lo and behold, the thing sells out the minute it's available because 100 people were cheering you on and participating in the making of your work. So if you're able to do that, and if you're confident and comfortable to do that, it can be really fun to put social media into your process. Don't create work just because you think it'll do well on social media, but it's a really fun way to connect to your audience now more than ever, that we're all locked up at home and all we want to see is your latest beautiful painting or sculpture being made.
Henrietta asks, she's in the UK as well, so I have a lot of UK people following. Uh, how do we find the buyers rather than other artists, or attract galleries?
Right. Well, you are going to find a lot of artists, that is for sure. And the thing is, when another artist likes your photo or reshares it, well, they also have a network that might possibly be interested in it. So it's not necessarily a bad thing in itself, but I do completely get where you're coming from, which is there's 100 artists following me and only one potential collector. The thing I tell artists is to sort of think as the person you're trying to attract, and in particular, in this case, a buyer, a collector. Sorry. So a way to do this is hashtags are a really powerful tool for this, because people use hashtag to search for content they want to find or they're looking for, right? So I think a lot of people, they go, okay, I want to attract an art collector. I'm going to use hashtag art collector. Well, that's not what an art collector is searching for, if that makes sense. So if they're looking to commission a portrait, then they might look for hashtags along the lines of portrait for sale, portrait commissions, commissions open. portrait artist, UK artist. Really think about keywords that people might search to find people like you and people who are selling something that you're selling. It's really important at this point to understand what you're selling. I know this is not necessarily a popular thing to say, but for instance, just putting in your bio commissions open is not going to attract people, because I don't know what kind of commissions you're doing. I don't know what type of work you do. So you need to be very clear on whether you sell original works, whether you sell prints, whether you sell multiples, whether you sell courses, whatever it is. And you need to be very clear about that so your audience gets it. And then use keywords where they may find you. I love purchasing art as a gift. So I've been strolling the Instagrams for these type of things, and you have to think about what your ideal buyer is looking for when they look for you.
Very cool. So I have a question on websites. What are things that artists should include on their website?
Well, that's a really good point, and we actually help a lot of artists rebuild their websites or build them from scratch. And well, I'd say, it needs to be really clear who you are and what you do from the get-go. So do bear in mind that people nowadays have really short attention spans. So you want to really put on there what you want them to know about you straight ahead. So important things are a really crisp homepage where your work is front and center. It needs to be easy to navigate your sites, because if it's not, people will just click off. Your CV and your bio are good. I would make those available because it's good to know, where you come from, what your art is about. I would say keep your bio really to the essential, and then go into the details in your CV. And again, I would really keep in mind what you want people to do. So this is what you could call for action. So do you want people to sign into your latest Zoom class? Do you want them to buy your latest original works? Do you want them to buy your prints that are available through a gallery or through a studio? And you want that to be super available for them to have the option to pay online, and to be confident to do so. So maybe, through a service like PayPal or Stripe, something where they won't go, oh, I have to send a check in the mail and maybe it'll come back to me. Do you know what I mean? We're all used at this point to buying online, or at least most of us are. So I think you want to make it really easy for people to find your product and purchase it if they love it.
Very cool.
Oh, well, speaking of websites,
Just a little practice.
Yeah, your transition was. Well, yeah. Speaking of websites, this is a Discerning Eye website. So again, people can go and take a look at their favorite works. Available until the 31st of December, so you can grab Christmas presents from there if you want to, or if your New Year's resolution is to bring new work into your home, then that's the place to be. And you can have a look at it also to see what you might include on a website. It might be a good example.
Great.
Yeah, again, Trinity Boy Wharf. I saw someone in the comments saying that that they had Anita as a teacher and that was their claim to fame. Well, Anita Taylor is the coolest artist and educator and director around. So that is a claim to fame for sure.
And how do you find exhibitions right now? Like, have you seen anything really cool and innovative in this time?
Well, I have actually, and I think the next photo might be a new one that we haven't talked about yet. So obviously in the UK we are all locked up at the moment, which sounds like a bad thing. I'm not passing judgment on that, but we can't go in galleries. Um, so I really like finding new artists online, because that's the way we can experience art at the minute. And so this is an artist we're working with called Lucy Marks. I think she'd be a great guest for you, by the way.
Perfect. Let me know.
I have to put you in touch, but she's opening this week a show which is dedicated to her landscapes. So from the beginning of 2020, in particular in lockdown, she's made these amazing landscapes. And Lucy is, so she's primarily a landscape painter, and she has a really cool process where she goes outside, and she paints en plein air, as you say. And what she does is she starts with a drawing usually, and then she does sketches in watercolor or in oil, and she takes those back to the studio. So she doesn't work from photos, and she then recreates this landscape on canvas. And so the landscapes, they kind of look like Turner or Constable. They're really rich and evocative and kind of romantic. And they draw from natural landscapes, so they do have this, attraction that we all have to a beautiful landscape. But they don't reference, the landscape in a really realistic way. They sort of draw from it the idea of the landscape. And so she's launching her first online show, and she's selling the work directly from the studio, which is really exciting. So she'll be launching this week. And what's really cool about her work is that you can, it draws from a natural landscape, but you can also put a bit of yourself in it and project what you want on it. So she's a really brilliant artist, and I've been loving seeing her work. And again, I think they're priced between £350 and £600. 250, if I'm not mistaken, for the watercolors. So I have to hold myself back and not buy everything on her site, because I do have access to it, and I don't want to burn my credit card and also deprive everyone else from her beautiful work. But I'm trying really hard. So that's a show I've been liking, and that you'll have access to this week. Oh, well, you were just saying, actually, how do you find exhibitions? So that's how I find exhibition as a viewer. But if you're an artist, you might be thinking, how do I get my work into shows? So this is one of our call for entries, which is the Royal Society of Portrait Painters. So the Royal Society of Portrait Painters dates back 1891. It's a super established society of artists. And every year they do an exhibition where you get the chance to show with their members in central London. And it's open to everyone across the world. So that's kind of cool if you're, if you're from America, if you're from China, you get to exhibit in the center of London, in the Mall galleries. And there are £23,000 in prizes, with a first prize of £10,000. So that's not bad. And so it's only for portrait painters or people who do portraits, but you can also do drawings and prints. And the really cool thing about this show is a lot of people go to it if they want to commission a portrait. So there's obviously the opportunity to win these amazing prizes. There's the opportunity to sell your work in the show. But there's also the opportunity to meet people who want to commission a portrait. And there's these amazing stories that come out of the RP's annual exhibition where people, artists meet these really cool people that they get to paint and that they get to represent at a time of their life, and then keep on as buyers and as patrons. So if you're interested, you can take a look at the Royal Society of Portrait Painters. The easiest way to find it is again through our channels at Parker Harris Co. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. And so we have this portal called Artops, which references all the opportunities that are open to creatives like you. So check it out. You have until the 15th of January 2021 to enter. 23,000 prizes. Not bad.
Wow. And this is you give talk about social media.
Yeah.
Right now. So where can everybody find you? Just one more time.
Okay. Well, everybody can find Parker Harris at Parker Harris Co. I'm sure this is the account that we're doing the live on, so it'll be up there at the top. Here. There you go.
Or down below in the comments after it's posted.
There you go. Absolutely. So you can find us there. Parker Harris Co. We share tips for artists. We share opportunities. We share artworks and exhibitions that are open that you can see physically or that you can see online across the world. So do come and say hi there. We're nice. And you can also follow me on my personal pages, which are Art Featured and History of Art Daily.
Cool. Thank you so much. So I'm Aaron Jack. You can find me at Aaron Jack Line Art up here.
And follow Aaron.
Yes, follow me, follow both of us, follow all the accounts, because I think that's one of the best ways to just know what's going on is just to start following interesting people who are interacting, be part of the community. That's where I'm at. That's inspiring me. Everybody doing their lives or just talking or different information that different people have and access to. So follow the different accounts up here down below. So Aaron Jack Line Art. And would you like to share some words of inspiration or some wisdom, something you'd like to share from your heart, maybe?
Well, you're laying this on me. You're putting me on the spot. But do you know what? I will cite one of this year's selectors for the Discerning Eye, who said, "The coronavirus is for now. It will end. Art is forever." So, we're living through times that are really challenging. But if you want to create something beautiful out of it, or if you want to buy something beautiful and support an artist and have a piece of art that's going to stay with you, hopefully through your life, or that you might give to someone you love, then I really encourage you to do that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aaron. It was my pleasure.
I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate all of everybody who's stuck with us and over this time, or watching now, watching later, just being part of the community and knowing we're not alone. So thank you for being a part and giving us your time.
Thank you for having me. It was my honor.
All right. Till next time.
See you. See you guys. Thanks for following.